Paranormal M is your home for eerie tales and unexplained mysteries. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to join us for weekly chills. Are you ready to embrace the supernatural? Weird shit happens down in the basement. So this has happened in the basement of my childhood home. It was when I was around 13 or 14 years old. The house didn't feel particularly haunted, but both of my two siblings can attest weird shit used to happen down in that basement. I was having a sleepover with a friend, and whenever we stayed at my house, we always slept down there. The basement was fully finished with a big TV, a couch, a pool table, a Murphy bed, the works. It was great because us rowdy teenagers could hang out down there and not disturb my parents as much. Anyways, we fell asleep watching a movie on DVD. And at some point I recall waking up to the bright yellow selection screen glaring in the dark, and the same annoying-ass sound clip replaying over and over, just a few decibels too loud. Now it's important to note, to the left of the TV was a small skinny closet with a door. I remember we'd gone into the closet to grab some extra blankets before starting the movie, and perhaps we didn't close it all the way after. That was because when I woke up the door was slightly ajar, maybe 3, maybe 4 inches. So I wake up and I'm in that weird, surreal state. It's where I can't really tell if I'm awake yet or still asleep or just dreaming. I look at the TV and I'm suddenly frozen with fear. Right in front of the TV on the left-hand side was this tall, skinny black shadow. It was obstructing with this bright yellow color of the screen. It didn't have any particular features, more just a dark, vaguely shaped mist of a standing figure. Suddenly, almost as if the shadow noticed me looking at it, the mist quickly drifts into the closest next thing to the TV, and y'all, I swear, the door closes shut behind it. At this point, I'm so scared I couldn't move. Wanted to wake up my friend so badly, but I couldn't even bring myself to speak. I just sat there hoping I was seeing things, or trying to convince myself that I was still asleep, and it was just in fact a dream. All of a sudden, my friend, whom I thought was asleep this entire time, sits straight up next to me on the couch and goes, "Did you just fucking see that?" We sprinted up those goddamn stairs so fast our feet barely touched the ground. Really, I don't think I've ever run like that in my entire life. We told my parents the next morning and they just laughed at us, clearly not believing it. But when I told my siblings the same story, they both just shrugged, each responding similarly with something along the lines of, "Weird shit only happens down in the basement." I think my ghost likes video games. This is more or less just a cool thing that happened. So my family 100% has spirits or ghosts attached to us. We've all seen them, even interacted in one way or another. Whenever I'm in my office playing video games, I'll see something moving behind via the reflection of the screen. I realized one day after the third time it happened in the span of an hour. Wasn't me. Wasn't the graphics. Also explained why my office was always freezing after bed, despite it being warm when I first go in. I have 2 blankets on my desk for this reason. It stays warm when I'm working or writing, which is just weird. Talked to my mom because I was pretty sure something was watching over my shoulder. Then we had this idea to take the spare chair I have in my office, and when I game, I put it next to me, but a little far back so I can't see it. Still kind of feel watched, and it's still chilly, but at least now the odd reflections that freaked me out had stopped. And the one day I forgot about the chair started again. So apparently they need a chair to watch me. The weirdest thing happened when my family and I were put for town for the weekend. My friend messaged me and asked if I wanted to play Marvel Rivals with him because he saw I was playing it. Guys, I was somewhere in another city buying books, nowhere near my PC. But I had indeed had the log that I had been online for at least an hour playing Rivals. I have a terrible habit of leaving my PC on, but I always make sure all my tabs and windows are closed before leaving my desk. I get home, my PC was off, not asleep, off. So, yeah, I think whichever one watches me game decided to indulge while I was gone. Something attacked me. I've told 3 other people this story. 2 of them were involved that night, and 1 was my therapist. I'm a scientist, although I'm spiritual and believe in ghosts. I never really believed in demons or things of that nature. I did grow up in a haunted ghost house, but since moving out, I have not experienced any paranormal activity, nor have I had any hallucinations. Hoping one of you can help me figure out what attacked me. This summer I wasn't feeling well. I was going to bed early. So while in my pajamas, I saw the local Facebook page had posted about the Northern Lights being out. I'd been trying to see them all year and just kept missing them. So I grabbed a light jacket and I headed out. Of note, I had no alcohol or drugs in my system. I drive north. Found some fields to stop in, but word had gotten out and every minute another car was passing trying to find a dark area to see the lights. After my 3rd spot was wrecked, it takes about 10 minutes for your eyes to adjust, and every headlight started you back at T01, and I just jumped in my car and drove even farther north. I was on the phone with a buddy of mine, as I'm a single female alone at night, and he made me feel safer. I hit the highway, and then I saw it. The empty, abandoned land that was used by the military for some unknown scientific experiments. It had just become public, and I kid you not, the radiation levels had finally become safe to walk around. I'd been there in the daytime and seen some of the old bunkers. Definitely something weird going on there. But it just so happened to be mostly an open field with no streetlights, making it the perfect spot to see the lights. Turned down the gravel road, drove about a mile in. I even made the comment to my friend that this place was spooky, and these weird birds kept flying around. They looked like bats, but when they landed, they didn't stand like bats do. I grew up in the country, so the dark doesn't bother me. I just kept going. I finally reached the middle and pulled over to the side of the road. No one and nothing for as far as I could see. I grabbed my phone, stepped outside, took a few photos, and then waited for my eyes to adjust. After about 10 minutes, right where my night vision was starting to work, the hair on my neck stood up. I knew this feeling, as it usually meant an animal was watching you. Again, I'm a country kid. On the phone mid-sentence, I turned to my left and my entire body froze. It was like the air was moving, kind of moving shadow, but my mind also just knew it was something that walked on 4 legs but stood up. Possibly a dog, but again, it was translucent. I started screaming, ran back to my car. I felt that thing hit my back and bounce off, like it tried to go through me but couldn't. The second it touched me, it felt like a Dementor from Harry Potter, but worse if possible. Never felt such fear and dread. This was worse than death, and I don't and didn't believe in hell, so to me, death isn't necessarily scary. This made me feel like even in death, I would have never felt happiness again. Jumped in my car, sped down the road, still screaming and praying. I kept screaming for my dad and brother, who were both dead, and Jesus, and I'm not even Christian, to save me. The worst part is, I was driving in the wrong direction. I had to turn around and drive back to get out there. I screamed the entire time for help, and at some point my phone call dropped. My service, which was fine on the way in, finally came back the second I hit the highway. My friend called back asking me what was wrong, but I was still screaming and crying. I could barely get the words out on what I'd seen. I drove all the way back into town, called a friend who lived nearby. Went to her place and stayed there for a few hours as I calmed down. I don't know, she was Christian. It was lucky that she believed in this stuff. Finally got the courage to go home, and she gave me something for protection. I just took a shower to warm up, and my back felt cold. It was like something had cut a thin line down across my spine. There wasn't any marks that I could see, but I had to sit in the shower with my back to the wall because I kept feeling like something was touching me. I lost my voice for 9 days after that. I had to lie to my friends and coworkers about the reasoning why. And it's been 6 months since I haven't had any weird experiences again. Sometimes, though, if something touches my back a certain way, I have a jolt of panic out of nowhere. Other than that, I've had no other issues. But I don't really talk about it to anyone because 1, I feel crazy, and 2, I don't want to bring attention to it as I really don't know what I even believe in anymore. I think enough time has passed that I want to know if anybody else has experienced this as well. As a scientist, I know our minds can play tricks on us. And I'm fully able to say, maybe the dark tricked my brain, but can't get over the fear that overcame me after it hit me. I've been scared in the woods at night before. I've camped, I've been scared something was watching me. This was so much worse than that. It's like I could feel it in my soul. What do the knocks mean? In the rental home I've lived in for 14 months, between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. daily, there will be random knocks on the front door. The knocks will come one at a time. A single knock. Between those hours, the knocks will happen randomly. They're very loud and sudden, and of course, there's no one and nothing at the door that could be making the noise. I live in Florida, for reference, and the door goes to get direct sunlight at that time, so I was just trying to rationalize the scientific reason for this. Like, maybe the seal's getting hot and popping. There's no damage to the structure of the door or the seals, and additionally, it's kind of only and always between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m., no matter the weather. My dogs hear the knock as well. Used to set them off, but now they've kind of learned to remain calm for a single knock. Used to startle us all, though, because of how loud and abrupt it is. By the way, I work from home and my desk is 20 feet in front of the door. I try to be aware now in those hours and not let it startle me. But it does puzzle me. I've been having various paranormal experiences all my life, but this house is the first I've heard the knocking. In this house, the other paranormal thing that happens is the chains from the light fixtures will randomly swing. Even if the fixture is fully off. This is something I've experienced before and might make a separate thread on. Curious to know, has anyone else dealt with knocking experiences? And what do you make of mine? Shadow figure sat on sofa. What does this mean, and what should I do? A couple of nights ago at my boyfriend's house, I couldn't sleep due to his snoring. So I went downstairs and tried to sleep on the sofa. Really couldn't sleep. Felt very on edge and got a sudden migraine behind my right eye. I rarely get migraines. Never have at night. Anyway, I'd been there a few hours and got to be around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. I was looking at the sofa sat opposite me and saw a shadow figure sat there on the right side of the sofa. The shadow head was clear as the light from the hall was behind it. No features, just an oval shadow and then the body underneath. If anyone has seen the movie White Noise, exactly like the shadow men in that. I thought I was being silly, so I tried to shut my eyes. But I just couldn't shake the feeling someone was sat there watching me. I felt scared, so I went back upstairs. The next morning, I said to my boyfriend casually, like it was so weird I couldn't sleep because I thought I could see Shadow Man. My boyfriend doesn't believe in ghosts. However, I sort of do, as I've felt and seen things before. He said, "Oh, you sat on the other sofa." I said, "Yeah," and he said, "Yep, I saw him once when I couldn't sleep." I asked what side of the sofa he said, and he said, "On the right side." Freaked me out as it meant that I wasn't being silly. What is this figure? And does it mean anything? And is there anything I should do? Mr. Growman, the Gromans. So just a little context, I've had close to a dozen paranormal encounters that I vividly remember. My great-grandmother, who I was extremely close with, read palms during the Great Depression. She passed away 2 years ago. But she was very into Ouija boards and things of that nature. She always sparked my curiosity about the paranormal since I was about the age of 7. For starters, my siblings and I have always had like a paranormal entity interaction at a young age. This is my little sister's story, as I remember it. We lived in a very small Section 8 house. It was my little sister, little brother, myself, stepdad, and my mom. My stepfather was an abusive drug addict. My mom worked 2 jobs and was never really home, just trying to make a living for the family. We moved into this small bright blue house on the southeast side of Indianapolis. The house was a piece of shit looking back at it. No running water, electricity there only worked half the time, and we were all outside kids due to this. My siblings and I never really were the type of kids to be glued to a TV or anything like that. One day my little sister came home from playing in the backyard. Brought up a guy she met named Mr. Growman. She said that he would follow her around and play dress-up with her and have tea parties. My stepdad went outside trying to mind the Mr. Growman, as he presumably thought he was one of the hundreds of pedos that lived in the area. As time progressed, we all, excluding my sister, presumed him to be an imaginary friend. My little sister would make plates for him during dinner, hold doors open for him, and let him use her room to get changed. My stepdad had 3 fish in a very large fish tank. We went to the local pet store to get some fish food, and when he returned home, they were about 30-ish feet away from the tank in the middle of the door, or floor. We didn't have any other pets, and the distance was too far for them to jump out of the tank. Nonetheless, we kind of chalked it up to the fish jumping out of their tank. When my little sister came inside, she informed my stepdad that Mr. Growman did it because he didn't like you. Well, we kind of ignored her since she was roughly 5 at the time, and we knew she was probably bullshitting. Months passed, and the whole family experienced the typical paranormal experiences as doors would slam. Faucets would turn off and on by themselves. Pictures falling, things of that nature. One day my mother and I were talking to an old couple. They lived next door and they'd been there since maybe the early 50s. The topic of the family that lived there before us came up. And sure enough, they were the Gromans. The old man my sister befriended was a grandpa that adopted his granddaughter after their drug-using, abusive father beat them severely. They all died in a house fire 30 years before we moved in. The lady proceeded to tell us that he was very father-like to his granddaughters, playing dress-up and tea parties, Barbies, the whole nine. To this day, we all talk about this, and it sends chills up my spine every time I hear his name. Living with the poltergeist. This happened in Indianapolis, Indiana, roughly around the year of 2004-2005. My ex-wife and I had our first kid. We were both young, as I was 23 and my wife was 19. At that age, we both wanted our own place, and we decided to get an apartment together. We searched for a few weeks and settled on some brand new apartments that were still in the process. And to my knowledge, this really wasn't anything but a cornfield beforehand, so I've heard other stories of these apartments being built on an old Indian burial ground. Never found proof of this, though. Anyway, during the process of moving in, we would bring our pit bull over to get kind of used to the house and explore around a bit. The first red flag was my pit bull named Phoebe wouldn't go anywhere near this place. She would sit outside the apartment and whine until we could just go inside, and then she'd start barking. Looking back, it's one of the obvious signs something paranormal's going on. But the thought never crossed my mind. After everything's moved in, things seemed to be going great. I worked second shift as a waiter and would often pick up hours for a few extra bucks. That was while my wife was in cosmetology school. So after forcing my dog to become acquainted with the apartment, she seemed to be doing fine. Refused to go into my son's room. I'll admit his room gave me a weird feeling, but as a young man, I tried not to think too much of it. Everything changed 3 days within being in my new home. I was off work on a random Tuesday. Took my son and dog to the local park for a few hours to burn off some energy. We got back and my son went and took a nap, or so I thought. When I went to check in on him, he was talking to himself in like a full, coherent conversation. Not necessarily abnormal for kids to make up friends or whatever, so I just asked him who he was talking to. He replied with, "The scary lady in the corner of the room," and he points to the corner of the ceiling. I was a little bit creeped out, but I'm a firm believer in letting kids run wild with the imagination. I'd ask him questions such as, do you know her name or how old she is? What does she look like? All to no avail. All I was told is she was an older girl who was very mean. Fast forward a few hours later. My wife returns home and we discuss the previous situation. Come to an agreement that he's just being a kid that went to bed that night. I awoken by my son screaming and crying in the middle of the night. Went to go in there and check on him. When I went in, he was pointing at the corner of the ceiling again. My dog was staring at the corner of the room barking. I wasn't sure what to do. So I took my son in our room and closed the door, and everything seemed to settle down. The next day I go to work and I'm working a double, but I won't be home till a little after midnight. I call my wife every break, make sure everything's going well. And it was. About 11:30 I received a phone call from her saying the same thing from the last night are happening again, and that I needed to go home at the moment. Tell my boss I'm having a family emergency and speed as fast as I can back to our home. As I open the door, I hear the chaos going on and go straight to our room where I find her sitting in the bed with her son, crying hysterically. The dog sprinting back and forth, barking as loud as a dog can bark. My wife just crying due to being overwhelmed, so we leave for the night and go to my parents' house. As we're driving there, my son looks at me dead in the eyes and says, "Daddy, she wants me to tell you she's a poltergeist." My son is 2, mind you. Doesn't even know the word, has never seen or heard anything conversation, even remotely close to that topic. So I knew he was on bullshit. We returned to the apartment the next day. My whole house is turned upside down. My son's dresser on the floor, all the clothes spread out all over the room. Toy box was emptied and every toy he had was scattered around. His crib went vertical up against a wall. And we moved out that day. Brings tears to my eyes writing this, and it feels like I haven't or can't begin to process this. Happened 20 years ago. Later that year, he walked in on my wife watching The Grudge and dropped down to the floor and started crying, saying that was the woman he saw. And by the way, I've always been a believer in the paranormal, or at least want to. But this experience made me look at life differently. Not only because my whole family was traumatized by this event, but because you never know what truly scary is until you're up against a force you can't even see. Horrific experience and things being turned upside down. Last week I had a horrific experience. It was the middle of the night and I woke up to footsteps in my apartment. I immediately got up and walked around. Didn't see anyone. Realized that my front door was stupidly unlocked, so of course I lock it. I do another check around the apartment and go back to sleep. Several hours later, I wake up to the same noises, but this time I stay still and listen. The noise stops, but my bedroom door opens ever so slightly, and I see the black outline of a person. At this point, I'm petrified. I do move or make a noise, I just wait. Think they mean don't. Finally, the figure just says 0 in a human voice. Sounded like any other man. I jump out of bed, turn on all the lights, and I look around again. Nothing. Double check the locks, and this time, lock my bedroom door. I sit in my bed for a while, waiting for something to happen before dozing off, and in the morning I'm still pretty freaked out, but I go to take a shower, and when I turn the water on, the water is hitting the ceiling. The shower heads had been turned completely upside down. I realized the only place I didn't check was behind the shower curtain. Really don't think that would have done that. Like, why would I turn the shower head 180 degrees around? It wouldn't make sense. Anyway, I go around my day, and I try not to think about it too much. Flash forward to yesterday. Get in my car in the morning, go to class, and my rearview mirror is also turned all the way upside down. And after that, I'm just so confused and spooked. I wondered if maybe I was sleepwalking and turning things upside down. I've never been a sleepwalker in my 22 years, and apparently it's very rare for sleepwalking to randomly start in your 20s. Almost unheard of. Does anyone know what's going on? I'm not well versed in the supernatural, so pretty out of my element here. Is there some sort of spirit that turns things upside down? Is it a bad omen or something? I'd love to hear people's thoughts. Rings falling on their own. Okay, this may sound crazy and unreal, but I didn't know where else to write this down. Last night around 5:30 a.m., I woke up from the sound of something falling down on the floor. Thought it was something metal from under my bed, so opened my phone and started searching for whatever was causing that noise. Didn't find anything under the bed, so I sat down. Then the noise was heard again. My cat entered the room and she was sniffing at something. So I just kind of instantly opened the light and found out that the noise came from my rings. There's no logical explanation for my rings to be in the front of my bed. I always keep them on a high shelf on the other side of the room. Didn't think much of it because it was late at night and thought that maybe I'd put the rings somewhere in my bed and just toss them down accidentally. The thing is, I always wear 4 specific rings that are my favorites. I only found 3 down, so I started looking for the 4th one. 4th one was on a shelf I keep my rings, but there is another ring on the floor that I haven't worn in months. Is this something paranormal? I can't find any other solution. I recently went through something traumatic and I'm trying to heal. And is this a message or am I overanalyzing? I will say the memory gets funny after you experience something traumatic. I feel I'm gifted but haunted by demons. I'm really struggling right now. My whole life has been in a battle with demons. Now, as a baby, I was born into a Christian family. I would often have dreams about future events, and I could change the weather through prayer one time. I was even healed from a fall out of a tree within an hour. The bruises and marks disappeared, and I looked as if nothing happened. The problem is that with good things come demons. Throughout my life, I felt completely alone. Sometimes meeting people who've had similar experiences. I would always see demons up until around 28 when I found an unhealthy way to make them go away. Often they would force me out of my body into a state between sleep and awake, into a dim gray world just like ours, without sun or night, just gray. In the astral plane, I experimented every time. I was there, I started by seeing if light worked, so I turned on my light, but it broke. It even broke when I woke up in the morning. I then tried my phone or electricity and nothing worked. I even went to see if others existed in the dimension, and I saw my parents sleeping. It was then that I realized I should never do that again. As if it was an invasion of privacy. Sometimes things would just kind of claw, maybe just talk to me. Some nights I would float in sleep paralysis above my bed or see figures or hear them. Most commonly it was a woman in a nightdress. Her fingers were pointy and black and her hair draped over her face like the girl from The Ring. I'm now 24. About 2 years ago I just moved to the other end of the country at the bottom of a mountain. I'm doing this with 17 people. I live in a tourist attraction, restaurant. During my stay here, for the most part, nothing happened. For around 4 years, nothing significant happened. I was just drinking, vaping, smoking weed often because, well, destroying my life at this time, though. I decided within the last few months to turn my life around. I quit smoking first, then vaping, then my phone addiction, and then something happened. I found myself floating in my bed again. Tried to ignore what was happening because I was angry. Then I heard a woman say, "I have a letter." And when I looked, there was a woman at the end of my bed. It was too dark to see her properly, but I just ignored her. I could see the outline of her fingers on the paper. I don't want any part of this stuff anymore. I'm sick of it. Fast forward a week later, and yesterday I'm in the shower. When I turned the shower off and opened the door, the mirror flew across the room into the sink. Brushed it off because I'm more bothered than scared by this stuff now, especially at this time in my life. But today, I completely lost it. The fact that this stuff is starting to happen again and reach its way into the physical world is quite serious. I feel so alone and crazy. I need to do something about this stuff, and I need someone to talk to. Just a lot of weird stuff. Any thoughts or stories, anybody? I'd love to hear. Am I alone in this? Good Lord. So, one, I've had some bizarre stuff happen throughout my whole life. More like than I can count on two hands, like a lot of which have had other witnesses, but it's happened at several different homes throughout my life. In the past week, however, I've witnessed more unexplainable things than all the other times put together. These ones are also much more up close and continuous. We're talking a gust of wind defying the logic of physics with enough force to make even the art on my wall sway, combined with a shadowy type or whatever you want to call it. And also what sounds like loud knocks coming from above our room. My partner was there too, and I coincidentally had been recording a video already, so I caught the whole thing and we were both floored. The things following have been just weird noises that shouldn't physically be possible. One night it was like 3 hours almost non-stop. I went through the entire house the next morning looking for any possible cause, and there's nothing. I actually caught some audio of that one on purpose because it just wouldn't stop and I felt like a crazy person. I wanted to look back on it, confirm that it was real, and also try to track down a possible explanation. There's also just one more weird, faint, shadowy, smoky thing visibly blowing past. Then the TV turned on by itself on one occasion. My partner and I were both thinking the other person did it. And on another occasion, our other TV shut off by itself, going to like a black screen for a few minutes, and then was nothing. I could do a troubleshoot, but then it completely just rebooted out of nowhere and went straight to an app that I've never even heard of. Should have just gone straight to the home screen. The one that happened tonight, our movie that we were watching, was running itself back multiple times with no possibility of me or my partner doing it, since we weren't near the remote. I was even clear across the room the first time. He got annoyed and asked if I could just pause it instead of running it back, and I was like, thought that was part of the plot. And that was just about an hour ago. I know that sounds insane, like I feel so weird even bringing this stuff up. I'm very, very skeptical and picky about these things. So I'll literally go down the entire list to debunk, and they've all got me pretty stumped. 2, I don't know why the F, but there's been such a bizarre amount of things that I've predicted or sensed or whatever you want to call it. All of this ahead of time with no possible way to know something's going to happen. Sometimes I'll just be like hoping something very unlikely happens, like all of us do sometimes, but it happens literally immediately after, despite the odds even to begin with. My friends and I joke about that one because it's so weird, and it's been happening for a long time so often. I also felt like something was very wrong before the first serious boyfriend drove into a semi. There's obviously no logical reason why I'd had that feeling when I did. Like a dead serious left him a voicemail an hour before I found out saying, "Something happened to you, I'll be so pissed at you." I remember that so vividly, like I felt terrified and delusional for feeling that way. My friends were all telling me I was being paranoid, and then we found out that morning immediately following me leaving the voicemail that he died. I don't know. Just things like that. The more I write about this, the more deranged I feel like I sound, and I'm really embarrassed. But I'm just dumbfounded, and I was curious if anybody else has had any similar experiences or has any ideas on how any of this could be explained. What the heck? I heard a baby crying outside my window. So, yeah, I heard a baby crying outside my window. I live in a very quiet neighborhood. My direct neighbors have all moved out recently, and generally nothing happens here. Late night around 12:40 a.m., I heard a high-pitched cry loud enough to be heard over my earbuds. I initially thought it was one of my cats, but I look up to see them both at the window, trying to look outside with very tense posture. By then, I had gotten my earbuds out, and I heard it again. Baby crying just outside. It was so loud and clear and very close. Except it didn't sound right. The only way I know how to describe it is my stomach sank immediately. I tried to call my friend because I was scared, and my service and Wi-Fi both went from full bars to nothing as soon as I dialed. The crying continued. I reset my phone and finally got it working again, and the second she answered, the crying stopped. I haven't been able to get the cries out of my head. What does this mean? I heard somewhere it's like a warning or something, but bad maybe, I don't know. For anyone wondering, no, I didn't acknowledge it in any way. I didn't look or get up. I didn't even tell my friend verbally. I texted her. Can someone please tell me anything about this? Edit. Wanted to add that there's no walking accessible walkways and walls are quite thin, so I can hear cats, or cars. A little bit different. I live in northeastern Alabama in a smallish town, low crime. So those suggesting animals, it would have to be an animal that could get close enough to my window, since my window is roughly 6 feet from the ground with nothing to climb on near it. It was extremely close to my window, which is why I hear it over my earbuds. Then again, I've lived here a while, and I've really only seen one stray dog, animal-wise, and it was properly collected by animal control. Something in my house. So for context, it's very often that I'm alone at night. I live with my dad, who works night shift, gone for 12 hours at a time. He normally comes home around 7 a.m. and sleeps while I sleep until 11 a.m. I wake up, I do my usual routine, which is close Dad's bedroom door so I don't wake him, then go to the bathroom and whatnot. I notice his door is already closed, but didn't think about it and do the rest of my routine. However, later in the day, after Dad wakes up for work, he asks me if I got up early. Kind of very surprised. Me waking up, let alone getting out of bed early, definitely not something I do. I tell him no, and he gets even more confused. Tells me what he saw that morning. He got home, got ready for bed, laid down trying to wind down. After laying there for only 10 minutes, he hears shuffling down the hall, and a figure closes the door and goes to the bathroom. Turns out the light and latches on the door, which he assumed was me. I may get some judgment here, but I don't care. I have a fear of bathrooms, which means that I don't fully close the door, at least at home. I leave it cracked, never fully close it. I can get through the fear in other places, but that results in the fastest piss and hand washing America's ever seen. I say this because my friend suggested maybe I woke up early and didn't remember. Which, I suppose is a slim possibility, but unlikely. Me crawling out of bed that early and fully closing the bathroom door is a fat chance. They also suggested a burglar that stole only her bathroom for 20 minutes, and then the door locked, so Probably not. A burglar that stole the bathroom. I like that. Abaddon. So this past Halloween, 10/31/17, some friends that I regularly play with online decided to come visit, so we could all finally meet in person. We rented an Airbnb in the city. We got all dressed up in our costumes and went out dancing. Everything was completely normal. Everyone was in great spirit and seemingly having a blast. So, fast forward to the early hours of the morning. I decided to break out my Ouija board. At this point, I should note that I've had paranormal experiences quite regularly my entire life. The more minute being things like sensing what I would call bad juju in certain areas of buildings, or maybe feeling a presence that makes my blood run cold. The more serious being hearing and seeing actual apparitions or having visions of things before they happen. That being said, at this point, I've never been able to get any sort of activity to manifest itself in a Ouija board. Not once. So, fearlessly, I brought out the board and proceeded to skeptically commune around with it with my girlfriend and my friend Vanessa. Everyone else in the house was asleep by this point. Vanessa took the reins as our guiding voice as we all meditated around what I knew to be nothing more than a board game. We all focused on shielding ourselves with a protective spiritual bubble. While sort of coaxing and passing spirits to commune with us on this Halloween night, nothing. 10 minutes pass. Cursor flicks back and forth a few times, and I silently think that's just Vanessa or my girlfriend moving it. We ask questions, all of which receive no direct answers. About 20 minutes into this game, I mentally focus on removing my bubble shield. I mentally call out to the void, saying nothing aloud, challenging whomever is listening to come to me. My blood is running cold and my eyes watering just typing this. Something came to me. I really can't describe it, but it was instantaneous. "Whoa," said the girls. They had felt it. I couldn't believe it. Their immediate reaction solidified that what I was feeling was not my imagination, but something very real. I trembled as Vanessa said, "Is something like or someone with us?" Now, I know what I'm about to say might sound bizarre, but just bear with me because it's kind of hard to explain what happened next. It felt like this thing dipped a tendril or a finger into my mind, just like you might dip a toe into a bath. I instantly felt its power. It was the most powerful energy I've ever experienced. It felt like I was tapped into an army of beings, or perhaps an entire dimension. It was unfathomable. It made me feel as if it could devour the entire universe if it so pleased. It told me its name was Abaddon. It didn't say it verbally, it was more like it wrote it out letter by letter inside my head. I was terrified. It felt like my body wasn't vast enough or strong enough. Couldn't house this thing's pinky finger. I felt overwhelmed. "What is your name?" Vanessa asked. The cursor moved and spelled out A-B-A-D, and at this point, tears were streaming down my cheeks, and I said Abaddon. The girls both looked at me. "Its name is Abaddon," told me about 5 seconds before you asked. At this point, I told the girls that we weren't safe, and we implored the entity to move on from us. We said goodbye, per Ouija board etiquette, and stumbled into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of bourbon. The girls ran in after me to see how I was. My girlfriend knows me very well. She instantly could tell I was not all right. For one thing, I was shaking like a leaf. My chest felt heavy, and I could really talk about it for some reason. Just couldn't. "Is it still with you?" my girlfriend asked. I nodded my head. We immediately returned to the board and basically exorcised the entity. We sat in a circle all holding hands. The entity ran through my hands and into the girls. They both felt it and started shaking. I immediately felt 1,000 pounds lighter, 20 degrees warmer. Eventually, we got it to leave us. We were all very exhausted by this, but we could barely sleep after. Everyone else in the house was awoken by this commotion and could tell something very serious had happened. My agnostic friend said that she was just lying in the next room praying. She said that she felt or heard what we were experiencing. I don't know. The next day I look up Abaddon, and this is what I found. The Hebrew term Abaddon and its Greek equivalent, Apollyon, appear in the Bible as both a place of destruction and an angel of the abyss. In the Hebrew Bible, Abaddon is used with reference to a bottomless pit, often appearing alongside the place Sheol, meaning the realm of the dead. My sister disappeared. Today is my older sister's birthday, so naturally I'm lying awake thinking about how long it's been since I've seen her. Can't sleep. I had an older sister named Courtney, passed away 31 years ago today. I was born after her death, yet we still managed to have a sibling relationship through her visits. She would sometimes comfort me with her presence, especially on hard days. Sometimes manifesting physically, other times simply washing over the room with her energy. Mostly, though, she would appear in my dreams. One particular nice vision she showed me was of what I assumed was the afterlife. I was a small child in the dream, probably no older than 5. She was a child as well, which was notable because she always appeared to me as what I assumed to be a young woman in her early 20s. But in this dream, she was leading me by the hand through a seemingly endless field with a very large and beautiful tree in the center. We were laughing and playing, and she told me what I would be here with her someday, and it was beautiful. I woke up sobbing. I woke from many of these dreams crying. But the last time she visited me in a dream, I woke sobbing for a very different reason. The dream itself was abnormally short, and the atmosphere was very dark. This was a stark contrast to her usual dreamscapes, which seemed to hold a golden glow to them. This dream was a nightmare. It began with me parking my car in the driveway. I was 16 at the time and had just bought my first vehicle. It was pitch black outside. I was using the tiny flashlight on my keyring to illuminate the path to the house. It seemed to be very realistic, as this is usually how the arrivals home, from where it played out, would always come through the side door in the house, enter in through the garage as to not disturb my sleeping parents. The dream followed suit with this behavior, got to the door and unlocked it. As I swung it open, I caught a reflection in the glass panes on the door. It was Courtney. I swung my head around in surprise. When my eyes met hers, terror washed over me. Her face was sunken in, severely decomposed. Maggots spilled from her empty eye sockets, and her jaw came unhinged on the side. Her flesh slowly melted away. She didn't say anything, but I knew 100% that it was her. Turned back to the door to see if I could see a reflection in it, and I couldn't. When I snapped my head back around, she was gone, and I immediately woke up. Horrible nightmare brought on by my own twisted subconscious, maybe. Vision from the spiritual realm warning me that she was in danger, possibly. All I know is, she's been missing ever since. Haven't once felt her presence. seen her appear, or even received a shred of explanation or closure. What happened to my sister? Something strange in the woods behind my house. I will preface this by stating that the information I'm about to share with you is not a creepypasta or any other form of fiction. It is in fact my complete and honest recollection of the unexplained experiences I observed in and around the wooded area behind my childhood home. Other people in my family noted much of the same while growing up there. Our stories match now that we're all decades older. I'm not saying I believe in skinwalkers or Sasquatches or any other cryptids. I'm a man of science. I cannot ignore the lack of reliable and testable evidence in regard to such creatures actually existing. That being said, something very terrifying and unexplained lived or lives in the woods behind that house. Occurrence number 1. My sister and I had just received a tent as a gift from our grandfather. He had smoked enough Marlboro cigarettes and sent in the UPCs to get us a massive Marlboro tent. My mom hated it. We, however, loved it, and immediately set it up in the property line behind the house. We intended on spending the night out there, but after about an hour or so, we experienced something neither of us can explain to this day. We saw an indentation, like drag itself across the tent, and we heard it dragging as it went. It was like a giant finger, or maybe a log, something of that size. My sister cried out, and I immediately bolted outside. I was convinced it was our father playing a prank on us. Upon exiting the tent, I was greeted by nothing. There's nothing there. I searched the area briefly before grabbing my sister and going inside for the evening. About a week later, I ventured out into the tent again, only to realize it was gone. Ran inside, asked my mother where the tent was. She replied that she had thrown it away because it had tears in it. Confused, I tried to convince myself she was lying and had just maybe tossed it out because she was anti-smoking and thought the tent looked trashy. But I fear she was telling the truth. Occurrence number 2. One fall morning. About an hour before my alarm for school went off, I was jolted out of bed by what I can only describe as an otherworldly shriek. It came from the woods. Didn't sound human, but it didn't really sound animal either. Foxes and coyotes do live in those woods, but they don't make those kinds of sounds. It was insanely loud. Occurrence number 3. One evening, my father and I were up late having one of our classic all-night arguments. As we finally wrapped up our fight around 3 a.m., my father said he wanted to read a verse from the Bible in order to close on a positive note of peace. He began to read aloud, with that same, or at least very similar, otherworldly shriek booming through the house. It had to be just outside the kitchen window, but it was so loud that it sounded almost like it was in the house. We immediately ran around the house trying to find what the hell had made such a sound. It even awoke my siblings and mother, who helped in the confused search. After about half an hour, we all just sort of gave up and went to bed scratching our heads. Occurrence number 4. In my senior year of high school, I got a cat. She was an outside cat, but we would let her into the garage to sleep every night, mostly due to the coyotes and potentially bad weather and whatnot. She would always come home before we shut the garage doors. That's because she didn't want to be locked out. So one night she didn't show. I don't think much of it, as cats sometimes go on long, like hunting or mating excursions, only to return in 2 or 3 days like nothing happened. I assumed this to be the case, but after not seeing her for a week, I went and explored the area behind my house. The fields, and of course, the woods. I think I found her, and I say I think because I honestly couldn't tell. It looked like her, but she had been seemingly turned inside out. I stared at the remains for about a minute before turning back and going home. I know this was a long read, and if you stuck it out, thank you for your time and interest. If you can shed any light on what kind of animal or being or whatever, don't hesitate to share or speculate. My family, especially myself, would love to know what exactly was in those woods. Paranormal event or paranoia. I've been tormented by this question for many years. I remember perfectly well when after I was looking for a pendant to marry, and I'd argue with my parents, and then I thought that maybe somebody had hidden it. I was slightly pissed off, but rather calm. What stuck in my head was that terrifying moment I turned my face to exit the door in the hallway, and above me was hanging quite high in the air a pendant. The same one I was looking for. Fell to the ground after a few seconds, also out of nowhere. I remember my terror and at the same time happiness that I finally found the necklace. No one believed me, which completely flustered me. I saw it with my own eyes even though I didn't want to. I tried, and finally when I talked to my father about it again, the reaction was slightly different. I was more determined. That was because my boyfriend also felt a presence when the parking sensor started going crazy. It was as if somebody was standing behind the car, but there was nothing and no one. So I spoke with my father privately. He said that he knew that this was my grandfather. He mentioned the same areas that were worrying me and my partner. I'm not afraid of this spirit, but the vision that paranormal phenomena are real, and I am afraid that I really cannot explain it, and it was not the sphere of my interests or what I would have wanted to experience at the time. For background, my grandfather was an extremely violent person, especially to many members of my family. He was an alcoholic who died alone and probably burned internally from alcohol. That's because his body, as witnesses from the family said, was black and charred. He destroyed my grandmother's rosaries, and if it's possible that he contacted me after death, why would he throw the blessed necklace at my feet? My grandmother, grandfather from my other side of the family were also already dead. None of them were that tall. My grandmother certainly wouldn't have to do something like that with Mary's necklace. Who knows? Maybe these energies aren't strong enough sometimes. Maybe this is what happened to just me. This necklace was held casually as if with 2 fingers and simply thrown to the ground in a gesture of dissatisfaction. Simply released from the grip of the fingers, this necklace. I'm far from church or fanaticism, so I'm even more tormented by this inexplicable memory for me. Haunted Family Farm. Shadow Man. I'm 5th gen on the property, so it's been a long time since we first settled there. Many people lived there long before us, from what we know. It's over 1,000 acres in rural Oregon. It's along the Willamette River. Since the moment we moved into the main farm, well, the farmhouse, after my mother became head of the farm, it was non-stop activity. My room was the absolute worst in the house. First thing I ever encountered was a shadow man who I believed was the original farm manager who was buried alive in the room below mine. Apparently, it was after falling asleep smoking a long time ago. His name was Thomas Knights. At first, he would peek over at me from my closet, It set off an old Ernie doll that my grandmother had left in there. Eventually, he started to stand at the edge of my bed and just stare. Thought it was just an active imagination. Till I got older, and my sisters and cousins started to tell me that they had seen him too. My sister told me that she hated when I would leave the door open at night. He'd do that when I was away because he would stand in my door frame and watch her since her room was across the hall and her door was always open at the night. My cousin had told me that one day when they were young, she was running out of the sister's room and had just happened to peek into mine as the door was ajar and told me that she had seen a shadow man leaning casually on my bed frame holding a cigar-like shape in his hand. He was always harmless, and I often spoke to him out of the boredom, sort of, but normally would just watch me from the edge of the bed my whole life. Just be there, and the last time I saw him was the night before I moved out for college. I was sitting in my bed, lamp on. I was saying my last goodbye before I left for school, and I don't know what I did, but I must have pissed him off or something, because as soon as I finished my sentence, I felt a sharp pain down my thigh, and ripped my covers back to see 3 long scratch marks. They were starting from the top of my leg to my knee. I was upset, so I basically said, fine, I guess that's how it's gonna be. Slept on the couch because I didn't want to deal with them. I have so many stories I could go on and on about children speaking through the crack of my window at 1 a.m. The sounds of screaming in the trees, or the whistling in the woods, or the mysterious babies crying and so forth. The lady in the house. I've had a thing for the paranormal ever since I was 3. I was sleeping in the same room with my parents at the age, and my dad usually fell asleep watching the TV. A few times he fell asleep, and TV was on a show called A Haunting. Man, I was terrified by it. But in the same time, I couldn't get enough of it. When I was 7, I started watching documentaries about paranormal, almost on a daily basis. I was interested in finding stories from people in my village. I live in the countryside in Romania, and man, there's a lot going on here. After a while, I felt as if something was in or around my house, and now this may not sound logical, but I knew and kind of still know whatever that thing is not human. And it was there because I've showed interest in paranormal. Started seeing this lady when I went to bed. I don't know how to describe it. I didn't see it as a human being that stood there. I just had the image in my head and simply knew something was there. I was terrified, but still wasn't sure if it wasn't just a dream, even though I wasn't sleeping, but I was trying to find excuses. Then one night I was sick of it. Got up and said, listen, I'm sick of you tonight. I'm going to go to sleep. And if you wake me up, you'll be just as terrified of me as I am of you. Now imagine a 7-year-old saying that to a demon. And as I'm saying, I thought I was dreaming all the time, and next day, though, my mom asked me who I was talking to, and I just said, nobody. After that, I haven't seen that lady again till this day, but, sorry, I have to write so much. About a year ago, I had an even weirder experience. It's in my courtyard. I had this beside the house I live in. It's an old house. We used to stay there, but it was too small, and we moved out and used it as sort of a storage place. One summer evening, I'm outside with my little cousin. She was 3. She's on a rocker in front of my house. She asked me who lives in the old house, and I told her that, well, nobody did. She was 3, totally unfocused on my answer, and asked me again and again, and I said, nobody lives there. She was looking at the house and said, yeah, nobody lives there, just a lady. Is it necessary to say that my heart dropped? I was trying not to look panicked so I don't scare her. I didn't ask her what lady and told her that there's nothing there. I just asked her, where is the lady? just to make sure, and she immediately pointed to one of the windows. Obviously, I saw nothing there. The same moment my mom and aunt came outside, I just went to her and told her to ask my cousin who was in the house, and, well, my cousin said without hesitation, "The lady," pointed to the window again. My mom turned pale. But then she said, "She's just like you." Never mentioned it again till this day. The house was demolished about a month ago, so no more lady in the house anymore, or at least for now. I have many other experiences, like personal experiences or from other people, and if you all want to know more, just let me know. Hospital experience. For almost 3 years now, I've been studying at a nursing school. Half of the study year, I spend it in the hospital practicing. Here's my one and only experience that I had there so far. I'm working in the afternoon shift, and I was the only student to practice that day. Therefore, I had access to all the rooms, and usually we got only a few patients' rooms to work with, depending on the nurse that guides us. There was this one room, 11 I think, and had only 2 beds and a lot of space, so they kept there like sort of EKG machine and sometimes a wheelchair or 2. One nurse sent me there to get an EKG machine, and because the door was closed and I didn't get into that room at all that day, I entered silently because I thought there were patients there and I didn't want to disturb them. When I got in the room, I noticed it was empty. But the bathroom door was opened, and I could hear breathing, like a very deep kind of breathing. I knew that was a new patient that got to the section a few minutes before and thought it was her in the bathroom, so didn't focus too much on that. Did my job with the EKG, and when I brought it back to the room, I noticed that none of the beds were touched. Couldn't hear the breathing. Stood there for a few minutes trying to understand if it was only my imagination, or did I really hear someone breathe in there? Got to the conclusion that I probably heard a patient from the other room, and I just decided to ignore it. A few days later, I heard the breathing again, but this time I was in the hallway. Door was opened, and when I got inside, it stopped. That time, I got a bit annoyed. I thought I was losing my mind or something, but again decided to wash it off because there's no one there. The last time I heard it, and probably the creepiest time, it wasn't even breathing. It sounded like a faint snoring. I went fully on investigation mode. Went in the room, checked the windows, checked the bathroom. I looked for any vent or anything there, and nothing in the room, but I could hear clearly as I hear myself speaking. I even checked the other rooms, but nobody was sleeping at that time. It was lunchtime.